50 years of celebration marks the Central Bank of the Bahamas' journey of the rich legacy and evolving vision guiding our financial future. The question now is, how has the institution's role shifted over the decades? And what does this mean for the economic landscape moving forward? This is, from inception to present, the evolution of the central bank's role in the Bahamian economy. Join us as we explore the past, the present, and the future of the central bank's impact on our national economy. Keep watching. A brand new episode of You and Your Money starts now.
You and Your Money is brought to you by the Central Bank of the Bahamas.
Welcome to You and Your Money, everyone. Joining us today to talk about the economic growth and financial policy is Mr. John Rolle, Governor of the Central Bank of the Bahamas. Governor Rolle, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Governor Rolle, what is your outlook on the country's economic growth this year and into 2025, and what key factors will drive this growth?
Well, that's a very good question. We are still very much grounded in tourism, and the economy continues to respond very positively to the recovery in tourism. And looking at 2024 and 2025, in 2024, we expect that the economy will continue to grow slightly above its average medium-term growth potential. So we're still growing a little bit faster than we should expect once we get fully out of the recovery phase. And that reflects the fact that even while we've come back from the pandemic, there's still some carryover of unmet demand in terms of vacation travel and the like. We're still continuing to see that benefit as a country. So in 2024, while we are not expected to grow as fast as we did in 2023, it's still a bit higher than the average that the Bahamas would ordinarily experience. And when we look at 2025, the expectation, even when we factor in, what's happening in the United States, where they're trying to bring the economy a little bit into a slower growth path to deal with inflation and the like, the expectation is again that the Bahamas will continue to move ahead at a comfortable pace. Where we might face challenges, if any, would be that some of our hotel room inventory is still out of service, and so to the extent that we can get some gains potentially by putting more of those inventories back into use, that would be an upside. I also see the potential, if we can continue to make inroads in terms of how we facilitate the air transport into the country to our airport facilities. Again, that's an upside where the Bahamas can see gains or sustained activities irrespective of some of the other supply issues, because a big part of what is also driving the industry now is what's happening in the vacation rentals. And then in the cruise segment, there's a lot of transitional activity in terms of some of these developments that have been ongoing in the various family islands and the like, which have a foreign investment component that is beneficial now. But the real story is going to be that they're going to be transitioned into use, which means that the potential is going to be greater to extract value from the cruise sector. And so that also helps to characterize, the environment for the Bahamas.
Now, how has the central bank's efforts to relax the exchange controls progressed, and what has been the impact so far?
Well, we like to preface our exchange control relaxation efforts by underscoring that it is still a very gradual process, and it's mindful of the fact that the number one priority always remains making certain that the environment functions in an orderly fashion and we don't lose track of our ability to keep our currency fixed at 1-to-1 with the United States, which means that we focus on relaxation for the most part that reduce the administrative burden that Bahamians have when they go in and they get foreign exchange for legitimate payments. And that process has been moving along quite well. We continue to push more of that responsibility out to the commercial banks. The other area where we have, I would say, made some very notable progress is the exchange control rules that apply to the ease at which Bahamians can make investments abroad. And we've again relaxed in such a way that we've pushed a lot more of the decision making around those approvals out to the commercial banks. And that means that it's easier now for Bahamians to invest or to go through the process of acquiring foreign exchange to invest abroad. Very significant in that regard is also the fact that, for the most recent few years, Bahamians have been able to do that at a much lower cost, because there is a premium that applies when you're purchasing foreign exchange for investment purposes. So it's 5% on the dollar. For other transactions, we don't pay a premium. Irrespective, you still pay stamp tax and all the other commissions, so just to be clear. But that 5% premium compares to what used to be a 12.5% premium for most of the previous decade. And before that, when we first started to look at liberalization, we used to pay a 25% premium for those types of investments. So cumulatively, that's a considerable amount of transformation. And we are seeing the impact in terms of the increased volume of interest that Bahamians are expressing in terms of going out there and making investments through what we call the investment currency market. But it's still within the context of being manageable, and it continues to be.
As we talk about the progress that's being made, even from the space of investors or even investment, the central bank also has relaxed their lending rules for residential mortgages at the end of 2023. Is there any indication of the impact that has had to date?
Well, we caution the public that some of these types of relaxations tend to have a gradual cumulative effect over several years.
Okay.
But the net effect of the relaxation is that lending institutions have more flexibility in setting the down payment requirement, as an example, for individuals who are coming forward for mortgages. In the past, in order to get a mortgage where you only made a 5% down payment, for example, or 10% down payment, you had to come up with what we call a mortgage indemnity insurance, which would have required that you take out a policy to sort of safeguard that if you defaulted on the loan, the insurance would cover the shortfall. But having the conversation with the banks, we came to the understanding that the mortgage indemnity insurance and how it impacted down payment requirements, while it was costlier, it didn't necessarily mean that you had a significant number of experiences where people defaulted during the period where the insurance would have had value. So removing that requirement now gives the banks more flexibility to scale the down payment rule. But the banks still continue to look at it from the point of view of what the burden, the repayment burden is on the loan. And in those cases, they still focus on whether an individual could be paying, say, more than 50% of their monthly income on debt servicing. So I think the ceiling, the expected ceiling in terms of what the burden is of repaying a loan is within the 50% range.
Now, as we're talking about mortgages and the impact, how does the central bank assess the current fee structures imposed by commercial banks, and are there any plans to regulate or cap these fees?
Well, I would say that it would be a good thing to get to a different state in terms of how we regulate the environment, but we have to be very careful that regulation doesn't digress, and I use digress deliberately, into a state of price control.
Okay.
Because the challenges that we face in the Bahamas right now is, yes, quality of service is degraded. We're concerned in some cases about the supply. And so we want to reverse those. Reversing those imply an uptick in resources input in those who are supplying financial services. And so when we look at the cost side and we are trying to pull back on those costs, that's a tension that goes in the opposite direction. So I think we want to make certain that when we think about regulating the sector, we focus on making the process more transparent, carving out by way of rules, approaches where the cost of services does not hinder financial inclusion or access to services, and that's something that we have as part of our work plan. But we have to recognize as well that there is a level of transparency in the sector, but also that what you experience as consumers reflect the cost to a great extent within those sector. And the financial institutions operate in the same environment as other businesses and enterprise, and it reflects as well the cost realities of doing business in this country, and those costs in all segments pass along to the consumers. Now, that said, there's an amount of privilege involved with being in banking, to the extent that we are concerned about making certain that banks remain operating in a safe and sound fashion, because weak or failed banks jeopardize the deposits that are placed in them. So our continuing emphasis is always making certain that banks remain sufficiently viable for that. But we also require that banks have large buffers in terms of the amount of capital they carry as part of the insurance to make sure that your deposits stay safe. And so that then also factors into the sort of returns that these institutions have to generate to keep the capital adequate. But there can be ways to look at how you make the process more transparent. You look a lot more at the rules around the fees, and also recognize that from a consumer financial protection point of view, while a lot of the public discourse has focused on the deposits and the payment side, when we look at this from a central banking perspective, we also want to make certain that we think about consumer financial protection practices that affect the lending side of the operations. And so that's also a part of the work that we're engaged in, and we think will come together in terms of some of the kinds of recommendations that we would put forward on how to deal with the fee setting practices. But we should not go into this thinking that the ideal is price control on banking services, because we are genuinely concerned in the Bahamas about the supply of services, particularly in our family islands. And so we want to deal with the structural issues that feed into cost, and in such a way that those input costs are less of a hindrance to the supply that we're trying to improve.
Well, Governor Rolle, we have to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll look at digital transformation and financial inclusion. This is You and Your Money. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Amanda Ferguson with 𝗖𝗙𝗥𝗡𝗘𝗥. With SandDollar, we were very pleased to know that we were offered another way for customers to make payments that were digital. We don't like handling cash, the physical cash anymore. It's safer that way. I can tell you that, I won't go back. I much rather the transactions being on my phone. It's simple, it's instantaneous, and my customers have actually really loved it too.
Do business better with SandDollar. Learn more at sanddollar.bs.
Get ready for the 20th Abaco Business Outlook, September 19th at the stunning Abaco Beach Resort for a full day of insightful discussions under the theme Future Abaco, Branding the National Identity, Planning for Success. Hear from our keynote speaker, the Honorable 𝗖𝗙𝗡𝗖𝗧. Don't miss our interactive panels on infrastructure, hospitality management, and airlift development. Secure your spot today at tclevents.com or call us at 322-1000.
Welcome back to You and Your Money. In this segment, we'll be continuing our conversation with Mr. John Rolle, Governor of the Central Bank of the Bahamas, and we'll be discussing digital transformation and financial inclusion. Governor Rolle, the central bank dropped its year-end target for check elimination. When does it expect to phase out the usage of checks?
I'm glad you asked that question because I want to dispel myths around any fixation on checks. Our primary goal is getting the financial system to a more efficient state of operations and payments. And what we observe in the process with check practices is very considerably a great amount of unevenness in terms of how financial institutions were defining, the terms and standards around their services. And we also observe a continuous process of declining use of checks. Okay. And so what the central bank desires most is that there's an orderly transition out of this. Beyond that, when we suspended the focus on check elimination, it was so that we could put the greater emphasis on getting the public to understand the importance of moving more in the digital direction. And that effort is going to be a multi-year effort, focused on the educational side, but also focused on improving the core of the payment system that we're going to have to continue to rely upon beyond this point. So we've given ourselves until the end of 2025 to assess how the process is evolving insofar as all of the various factors that go into what's defining the preferences individuals have around checks.
Well, I definitely could say, many persons have declined in using the use of checks and having to look at what are the other digital options that's available. Let's talk about how has the adoption of the sand dollar evolved since its launch, and what are some of the central bank's plans for expanding its usage, especially considering the role that sand dollar plays in the broader digital economy over the next 5 years?
Well, we think that the digital currency is going to be very important because what we try to deliver foremost is to have a platform where individual mobile payment products can sit upon and speak to each other in an interoperable way. And so that has been very important in terms of getting started. But we still have a lot of work to do on the adoption side. And a part of that is, after this point, we still need to see more traction in terms of getting the merchant ecosystem expanded. Okay. And we think a part of that process is going to relate to how the central bank pulls the commercial banking sector into the mix, because we do believe that it's important for them to have a direct role in making the access to the sand dollar easier, particularly for the enterprise sector. So when we look at the medium multi-year trajectory, that means how we even look at the point of sale systems and the like, and how integrated they become to mobile wallet payers in general. That's going to become very important. But getting the banks into the process is very important. I know that there's also sometimes questions asked about, what are the challenges that you encounter with adoption? So one of the challenges really was, the need to have persons see the seamless connectivity between the digital wallet account and the bank deposit accounts. And so we've addressed that by putting in place the interoperability or connectivity between the sand dollar platform and the automated clearing house. So funds today are traveling seamlessly between deposit accounts and digital wallets. And that helps because when we look at some of the use cases that have financial inclusion dimension to it, we have at least one instance where, say, in North Andros, a business has been able to resolve its payroll issues by using the same, instructions that it would if it were making payments to individuals on deposit accounts to individuals who have digital wallets, and using the sand dollar pay rail to do that. And there are other use cases like that that are being promoted, and we think that's an example of addressing one of the concerns around how easy it is to engage in this platform. And very beneficially too, the sand dollar experience also opened our eyes up to the challenges that small, micro, medium businesses have in establishing transactional accounts with financial institutions. And we crafted rules in the process to get the financial institution to focus in many cases on the sole proprietors in their individual personal state, as opposed to getting too distracted by some of the due diligence that might happen for these very simplified businesses if they took an approach that was just focused on documentation that looked at how the business itself would document its existence. And that has also been quite instrumental in terms of some of what the payment providers are doing and getting entities onboarded in the Family Islands.
Well, definitely, Governor Rolle, it's good to see that the central bank has definitely taken on some of these challenges and addressing the issues as they arise. Can you share any insights on how the sand dollar has impacted the financial inclusion in the country?
Well, we already see strands, and I say strands deliberately, but strands of progress in terms of the payment providers that have been able to go into the Family Islands and to insert themselves in terms of providing ATM or cash-related services. So that has helped. I've observed it directly in the case of 𝗖𝗎𝗓𝗓 and in North Andros. And so I see that as very positive. I also know that in some of the southeastern islands of the Bahamas, where we have given ourselves even some greater targets in terms of the sort of financial inclusion outcomes that we would like to see, even in those cases, these digital payment providers have been able to go in and begin to make themselves familiar within the community. So that's been very positive.
Well, congratulations on making the moves, especially for the Family Islanders. Well, Governor Rolle, we have to take another quick break, and when we get back, we'll talk about the central bank's legacy and vision. This is You and Your Money. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is 𝗪𝗓𝗧𝗛 with 𝗪𝗘𝗥𝗚𝗡𝗘𝗥. With Sand Dollar, we were very pleased to know that we were offered another way for customers to make payments that were digital. We don't like handling cash, the physical cash anymore. It's safer that way. I can tell you that, I won't go back. I'd much rather the transactions being on my phone. It's simple, it's instantaneous, and my customers have actually really loved it too.
Do business better with Sand Dollar. Learn more at 𝗪𝗪𝗡𝗔𝗑𝗧.
Get ready for the 20th Abaco Business Outlook, September 19th at the stunning 𝗪𝗥𝗡𝗘𝗥 Beach Resort for a full day of insightful discussions under the theme, Future Abaco, Branding the National Identity, Planning for Success. Hear from our keynote speaker, the Honorable 𝗖𝗎𝗓𝗓. Don't miss our interactive panels on infrastructure, hospitality management, and airlift development. Secure your spot today at tclevents.com or call us at 322-1000.
Welcome back to You and Your Money. Mr. John Rolle, Governor of the Central Bank of the Bahamas, is still here to speak with us. Now, in the previous segments, we spoke about the economic growth and financial policy and digital transformation and financial inclusion. In this segment, I wanted to talk about the central bank's legacy and vision. Now, Governor Rolle, the central bank celebrates 50 years. Has the role and the vision changed over these 50 years? And what is the vision and the role today?
Yeah, well, the vision continues to evolve. We want to see continued progress in terms of how Bahamians experience the interaction with the central bank insofar as exchange control is concerned. We want to see also the Bahamas progress to the state where our payment system continues to evolve, is efficient, and provides the necessary lubricant and support for commerce. So that is very, very important for us. And we also want to see, our financial system get to a state where it is more efficient and dynamic. And I'm referring to the domestic side. So from a visioning point of view, we want to see the financial system can get to a better state. We want to see commerce even better facilitated insofar as how the payment system functions. And we want to see the Bahamas continue to, while it preserves what it can and what is good with exchange controls, that it makes the process less visible insofar as the experiences of the ordinary individuals are concerned. But our role hasn't changed in 50 years. You know, we got to keep the system stable and sound, and that means keeping the currency on even keel. We focus on payments and all of the various dimensions that I've just mentioned. And of course, everybody knows that we continue to play a role in terms of, you know, being the issuer of currency, and now the currency is also digital.
Well, I guess you can say 50 years and going strong. How has the central bank's mandate evolved in response to the changing economic landscape of the Bahamas over the past 5 decades?
Well, I would say that, again, related to our roles, we took on, in the payment space directly, the responsibilities for the real-time gross settlement system. So that's the wholesale side of the payments infrastructure. So that was introduced at least 2 decades ago. We've since inception, we've now taken on responsibilities for credit unions. That happened around the early to mid part of the previous decade that we've just exited. So that's new. We've also over the years been very instrumental in having a deposit insurance system put in place. That was not something that was in the Bahamas in the 1970s, that's the 1990s. So that's also new in the role. Having a credit bureau, which is very important in terms of lubricating the environment for lending. So again, that is something that is very critical and relatively new in terms of some of the things that are coming under the central bank's mandate. And we've assigned to ourselves in the more recent, half decade, an increased emphasis on financial inclusion and trying to put together a framework to tackle a lot of the consumer financial protection issues. And we started that by having in place on a voluntary basis a financial services ombudsman, which I think is going to evolve. And we're going to begin to see even more returns from that soon.
Well, Governor Rolle, you talked about, some of the mandates and some of the things or some of the ways the central bank has evolved over the past 5 decades. What are some of those key milestones or achievements that stand out in terms of central bank's history, and how they shaped its current strategic direction?
Well, I think one of the critical achievements that the central bank would celebrate would be the establishment of deposit insurance, where we would have led a lot of the work for that. So when I speak about deposit insurance, I think it's important to see how important that is. And I think also in very recent times, having a credit bureau is very important, because it's so essential to recognizing, how it fits into the narrative in terms of how easy it is for individuals to put forward the kind of information that goes into them getting, credit on fair and reasonable terms. And also, again, I would say, what we've achieved in the payment space, and I think what we stand to achieve in the next stage in terms of some of the transformation that will happen in payments.
Well, Governor Rolle, I want to say congratulations on the achievements and the milestones of the past 5 decades. And I also want to say thank you for joining me on the show today.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Exploring the past, the present, and the future of the central bank's impact on our national economy has revealed that we are well on our way in the right direction. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, let's look forward to the next 50 years with the Central Bank of the Bahamas and the new levels of impact it will have. That's it for today's show. Don't forget to follow You and Your Money on Facebook and tune in next week for a brand new episode. I'm Ria Christina. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.